Hello, everyone, and welcome to SCORE Fairfield County's live webinar, Types of Digital Marketing. Our sponsor today is the Norwalk Public Library. I'm Ruth Kelly, the webinar coordinator and a business mentor here at SCORE Fairfield County. I'll be your host today, and our presenter is Nalini Goolsarran. More on Nalini in just a minute. First, some brief information on SCORE. Could you move to the next? SCORE is a nonprofit partner of the Small Business Administration. As you see on the screen, we have 3 areas of communicating with you. One is one-on-one business mentoring, and that can be face-to-face now, by phone, or by Zoom, or any other method that you can contrive. Second is our business education programs, which are in-person workshops or online webinars. They are live as it is today, and they're also on demand, which you can research on our SCORE website, fairfieldcounty.score.org. We also have a variety of extensive resources, including business tools and information on our website. Our next webinar is tomorrow at noon, and the topic is branding with Ramon Peralta. And on June 1, next week at noon, John Harmon will present business planning in 6 easy steps. Look for the specifics on fairfieldcounty.score.org. And now some useful information about today's event. We've set aside time at the end for questions and answers. If you have a question during the presentation, please use the question and answer window at any time during the presentation. It's located in the lower part of your screen. Our webinar will end at noon at about 1 o'clock today. This session is being recorded, and the link to the recording will be available on our website within the next couple of days. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Nalini Goolsarran. Nalini is a founder of EdgeSpace Marketing. She has a passion for transforming business practices and streamlining business communications. Nalini has a degree in computer information systems and over 10 years of experience in information technology, project management, and communications. Before becoming an entrepreneur, she was an associate chief operating officer for a division of a global financial institution. Currently, she provides website development, social media marketing, and SEO services to small businesses and nonprofits. Happy to have you back again, Nalini. It's a pleasure to welcome you. It's all yours.
Thanks, Ruth, and thank you everyone for joining us today. As Ruth mentioned, we're going to talk about digital marketing. What is it? Why is it so important? What are some of those common acronyms you hear all the time and you have no idea what they mean? And then talking about how those different digital marketing tactics and channels can work with you. The reality is that there's so many parts of it, it's easy to get confused and not know what to do, how to do it, and when to do it. So we're going to talk about that a little bit and hopefully give you the background you need in order to build a marketing strategy that works best for your business. Every business is different and every strategy is going to be different and unique to that business. So let's start talking about what digital marketing is. Is it really that important? The answer is yes. Digital marketing is any marketing effort that uses a device or the internet. The reality is we all have a cell phone. How many of you have a cell phone? Probably a tablet, probably a computer. And if the pandemic has taught us anything, is that more and more businesses, tools, technology, school, everything is going online. So if you're a small business, you're a nonprofit, and you don't have a digital presence, the reality is you're starting at the back of the line. You want to start to be competitive in your space. You want to be found on Google. You want to be recognized. You want to be validated as a business so that more people can do business with you. Some of those channels that we talk about, well, let's go back. A channel is basically a connection point between you and your consumer or your target audience. So that could be social media, emails, websites, search engines, text messages. Those are some forms of digital marketing efforts that have different channels. And I know channels can seem a little confusing, so I'm going to actually break that down for you right now. So what are some of your common digital marketing channels? The first one you have is your website. Your website is where you're going to put all your business information in terms of how they reach you. You're going to put some information about your services. You should be putting information about who you are as a business, who your team is, and then most importantly, why they should do business with you. Those are some of the most important things you want to have on your website. A lot of people have more complex websites that include frequently asked questions. There could be a blog. If you have job openings and other things, there may be application forms on there. So your website is really an entry point for how you communicate with your clients and customers. Another form of a digital marketing channel is your blog. This is where you're going to demonstrate your expertise in your field. So for example, I am a digital marketer, and if I were to write a blog, I could include blog topics such as best practices for web design, best practices for search engine optimization, or even types of digital marketing. All of those are types of information that I can put out into the internet, and then Google will index that and people will find me because that's the information they're looking for. So that's one channel that I could take advantage of based on my business. Another one are infographics. Infographics are basically images that visually depict data. Technically, what you're looking at on the screen right now could be considered an infographic. There's words and there's images, usually there's statistics, but it's really a visual representation of your information. Oftentimes you see infographic used on social media. Sometimes people use it on their websites. And then especially if you're a Pinterest user, Pinterest is a big place that people use infographics. Ebooks and white papers. So ebooks and white papers are also sometimes known as ClickFunnels, if you are familiar with that term. More or less, you have a website or a landing page where an user is entering their name and their email, and then they're getting something for free. Usually it's a downloadable ebook or a white paper that's a PDF. It is demonstrating your industry experts, similar to a blog. So you're becoming an expert in your field, but you're giving them quite a bit more of a valuable information in your field. So I could potentially write an ebook about all the different types of digital marketing. And if you want it, you can have it for free, but you have to give me your name and your email. And when you do that, I can add you to my mailing list and my distribution. When we get into some of those tactics, we'll talk about why that's so important. And again, we have our emails and our newsletters. So this is where you're going to promote content, discounts, events. It all depends on what your business is about and what you want to put out there. It's really another way to drive traffic to your website or your social media or wherever specifically you need them to go. So for example, my last newsletter that I put out with some updates on new services I was offering, it always has a little marketing tip of the month. And then I have a little corner about all the classes that I'm teaching and where folks can go to register. In my case, I direct them to my website, and then my website directs them to SCORE, because at the end of the day, I really want them going to my website. More people going to your website are more opportunities for them to do business with you. And then lastly, you have social media. I'm sure you've all have heard this term time and again, social media marketing. Social media marketing, it is here to stay. It's all about using it strategically. Common platforms include Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, TikTok, Snapchat. There's all of these different growing social media platforms. Locally, you also have Nextdoor and Alignable. There's so many and they keep growing, but these are the common ones that we use more often as a business. Let's talk about some of those acronyms, because we're going to talk about them a lot. And I'm sure you've heard some of these and you have no idea what they mean. So the first one is SEO. SEO stands for Search Engine Optimization. Essentially, the basic way to understand that is, how do I rank #1 on page 1 for Google? That's really what you're trying to accomplish. You're trying to jump ahead of your competition. You're trying to get found for specifically what you offer, and you're trying to reach people as they're looking for you. In that same vein, we have something called SEM, S-E-M. This is search engine marketing. It's a type of online marketing that basically combines SEO with pay-per-click. often you hear some used with mid-sized businesses or bigger businesses that have advertising budgets. It's not really necessarily used in the small business and nonprofit worlds because we're trying to do things on a budget and we don't necessarily have a big budget for pay-per-click advertising. So since we're talking about pay-per-click, we've got PPC. PPC stands for pay-per-click. That means that when someone clicks on your ad, you have to pay whoever. So in most often, the most common form that we know of is Google. Google ads are pay-per-click advertising. That means anytime you click that link is paid. Now, there isn't a fixed value for that link. What Google does is that there is a, call it a market value. Think about when you go to a restaurant and you order fish on the menu, fresh fish is market value. Whatever the price is at that time is what you're going to pay for. Same with your pay-per-click, which is why you always want to make sure if you are going to do Google ads that you have an expert who understands that. Otherwise, you could accidentally owe Google lots of money. There's some horror stories out there about how if pay-per-click wasn't done right, a lot of bad clicks and end users were paying a lot of money for it, or excuse me, the businesses. You've got CTA, also known as a call to action. A call to action is incredibly important. You want call to actions on your websites. You want call to actions on your newsletters. You don't necessarily want call to actions on your social media. And when we get into tactics, I'll explain why. But the whole point of a call to action is encouraging the users to do something. So a call to action tends to start with a verb. So sign up now for our newsletter for blank. Click here to get the latest discount code, or click this box and you can get free shipping. Those are some common things that you see on e-commerce websites. Small business website might be join our community so that you can get the latest, updates and events. You customize that based on what your needs are and the information you're putting out there. The thing with a call to action is you want to make sure that whatever you're enticing them with is what you're actually offering. So if you're asking them to sign up so that you can get a free discount code, but then you don't actually give them the discount code, that works against you. So be very clear and careful that your call to actions match what you're actually offering. And lastly, we have B2C and B2B. Apologies, there's a typo there. That should say B2B and B2C. So we've got B2B means business to business. Those are businesses that are selling to other businesses. Then you have B2C, which are businesses that are selling to consumers. So most of us that are small businesses, technically I'm both. I'm a business to business because I work with other businesses, but I'm also a business to consumer because I'm working with entrepreneurs and solopreneurs who aren't necessarily businesses just yet. So you want to be mindful of who you're marketing to because you're going to speak to them a little differently. So in my case, like you said, I'm a B2B because I provide a service to other businesses, but businesses like Target, Walmart, Amazon, those are B2C because they are selling directly to the end user consumers. That's important for you to know because different people are going to have different needs and your messaging needs to match their needs. So now that we know what digital marketing is, let's talk about why is it so important. A question that I ask folks all the time is, when consumers are looking for you on Google, do they find you or do they find your competition? Do yourself a favor, go look yourself up, see how you land, look yourself up for what you think your services are that people are searching for. This is where small businesses struggle in the Google ranking world and search engine world and all of those spaces because they're thinking that users are looking them up based on their business name. So if I Google EdgeSpace Marketing, yes, I show up. 90% of time, folks are not typing in EdgeSpace Marketing. They're probably typing in, digital marketing Stanford, digital marketing for small businesses. So those are some of the things you want to think about when you're using your digital marketing strategies. First thing first, whatever channel you use, whatever strategy you use, they're all about decision-making tools. Most people will search the internet for a product or service before they purchase it to make sure that it's valid, that it's credible. I've been scammed. At least I've gotten, at least one scam that I haven't even been able to get my money back from PayPal because I didn't take the time to go look up the business to make sure it was valid. I trusted an ad that I saw, and it was, it was a small thing, but it was something that now has taught me a lesson to always look up something. But when I think about my general behavior, 90% of the time I do go look up, whether it's a new restaurant and I'm reading reviews, whether it's, post-pandemic when I'm going on vacation, I'm probably going to look at TripAdvisor and figure out what are people saying, what are the pros and cons. People are now putting out recommendation requests on Facebook, asking for, I'm looking for a plumber, I'm looking for an electrician, who do you recommend? Those are some of the reasons you want to have an online presence, because your end users, your consumers, your target audiences are all looking for you, and they're looking you up in different ways. By having a strategic digital presence, you're giving your business the opportunity to tell consumers that they should trust you. In the past, marketing was considered exclusive marketing. What that meant was that you were creating a niche brand that certain folks had to fit a certain criteria in order to be considered the audience for that. When you think of brands that still do that, those are luxury brands, right? Gucci and Prada and some of those other luxury apparel lines, they're targeting a very specific audience, and they're creating an exclusivity model. Most small businesses and nonprofits, solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, we're falling into a space where inclusive marketing comes to play. What that really means is that we as end users, as consumers, are going out to the public and we're asking complete strangers for their thoughts on whether or not this is a valuable product. Think about how you use Amazon. Before I buy anything on Amazon, I look at the reviews. I look at how many reviews it has. I read at least a good portion of them. I go to Google My Business and I look up business reviews and see what folks are saying about them. And these are all factors that influence whether or not I do business. And if you think about yourself and the folks in your life, you're probably doing the same thing. And this is why it's important to make sure you're part of that conversation as a small business. And ultimately, consumers want to know that you can solve a problem. As a business, we always want to lead with, we're the best and we can help you. But the statement, we're the best and we can help you, hasn't actually solved their problem. So for example, if I'm a plumber and someone is looking for a solution to a leaky faucet, a blog that a plumber may write might be some quick fixes for a leaky faucet. Now, I'm not a plumber, and a plumber may tell me that that's totally incorrect, but it's just an idea to get you thinking along the lines of how you're solving a problem. It does create a little tension sometimes within businesses because they don't want to feel like they're giving away their services. So you have to find a way to manage that so that you're giving enough away that the consumer can trust that you know what you're doing, that you can give them what they need, and you can solve the problem ultimately. So let's look at digital marketing by the numbers. Studies show that between 70 and 80% of people research a company online before visiting that small business or making a purchase with them. Now, some of these statistics are pre-pandemic. I'd beg to say that about now we're talking about 90 to 100% of the time, given the last year and certain things that have happened, whether or not that business is even still in business, whether or not that business has adjusted hours, this number has skewed quite a bit higher given the current times. According to GoDaddy, According to GoDaddy, 6 in every 10 small businesses have yet to establish an online presence and get a website. How many businesses do you know today that still don't have a website? I could probably off the top of my head name about 4 that they have a digital presence, but it's not necessarily a website. They may be using their Facebook page as a website. They may be using their Google My Business as a website. The reality is neither one of those are a website. Those are social media channels, and they have different functions and they have different purposes. So you want to keep that in mind. If you think you're using Google My Business, LinkedIn, and Facebook as your website, it's not quite meeting the mark for what end users are expecting for a professional business. 53% of mobile web visits are abandoned if the website takes longer than 3 seconds to load. And for every 1 second delay in site load, the conversion falls by 12%. So that means that from the time someone looks you up, whether it's Google, whether they typed in your domain name or URL directly into the browser, that from the time they hit enter, you've got 3 seconds for your website to load. And if it doesn't load, they're leaving and they're going to the next one on the list on Google. This is why site speed is so important, and optimization and making sure that you have a modern, fresh looking website. Now, I know I'm focusing on website, but that is one of the biggest parts of your digital marketing strategy. And then 84% of users would abandon a purchase if the data is sent over an unsecured connection. Now that number may go up, it may go down, especially now as users adopt more online shopping, but maybe they're not so familiar with it. In the past, we've always been told, make sure that if you're buying anything online, there's a lock icon in the browser bar. Make sure you're looking for HTTPS, meaning that that's a secured connection. This is how you make sure credit card data isn't compromised, your personal information isn't compromised. So if you're using a website that's e-commerce that you've built, you want to make sure you have that SSL certificate so that you can have a secured connection. If you're using a third party, which a lot of small businesses do, there are vendors that already provide a service that they integrate with. They may shop through Instagram, they may shop through Facebook. All of those, you just want to double check and make sure they all have secure connections. 90% of the time, they're going to have that because if that's their business model, they will have already counted for that. So why ultimately is digital marketing so important? At the end of the day, it allows you to connect with your audience and influence them. Influence it can be positive or negative, but this is where you want to positively influence them. You're building a digital relationship with them. What you really want to do is understand what is it that their intention is when they're engaging with your business and your brand. I know for me, sometimes people come to me because they just want to pick my brain. They want to know what is it that I know that can help them. And I'm okay sharing that information because long term, it will help them grow their business. Other businesses may not do that. Some people come to me because they're investigating other digital marketing companies and they're trying to figure out who's the best fit, right? If you understand your user's intent, you can, as I said earlier, solve their problem and make sure you reach them in a way that solves their problem or fills in what they're looking for. You also get to know them. A lot of times folks miss the opportunity to send out surveys via email or ask questions on social media. You don't always have to guess about what users want, what users are looking for, because they'll tell you if you give them an opportunity to tell you. On the right side of the screen, we have a little infographic. What you're trying to do is you're trying to build awareness. That means you're trying to get seen and found on Google. You're trying to build interest with your end users. And you want to encourage their desire to buy. Sometimes users are just window shopping or online window shopping. So that doesn't mean that they're ready to buy yet. Some users are ready to buy, and ready to buy doesn't mean you're in e-commerce. Ready to buy can simply mean that they're ready to do business with you. They're ready to, build a website. They're ready to do social media marketing in my world. That's what that ready to buy means. So again, you're trying to target their awareness so that you're on their radar. You're trying to build interest, meaning you're building trust with them and that they know that you're somebody they can trust and they probably want to do business with. And then when they're ready to buy, when they have that desire to move forward, you're the brand of choice. And ultimately that leads to conversion. Conversion really means that they're doing business with you. They're ready to move forward to buy something. They're ready to contract you for services. And if you're in the nonprofit world, that could simply mean they're ready to donate because you've actually explained to them what you do, why you do it, how you do it, and how their funds will be used. That's very important in the nonprofit world. So now that we've talked about what digital marketing is, why you need to use digital marketing, let's get into a little bit about those types of digital marketing and help you figure out which channel you should use. So first thing we're going to talk about is search engine optimization. Search engine optimization can get very technical, but it doesn't have to be. There are simple things that you can do to make sure that you rank. One of the first things I always say is make sure you understand what users are looking for. I worked with a daycare recently, and we found out that users were searching for the daycare using day, space, care, meaning those are two separate words. The daycare's brand is daycare as one word, and whichever one is grammatically incorrect, we ended up having to put in the grammatically incorrect one on the website so that we match the end user search criteria. Now that gets very technical. And for those of you who are tech savvy, Google Trends is a great way to go check and test some of those criteria to make sure you're getting your phrasing correct. SCORE has lots of classes on SEO, so you can get into more details around how to do that. Your channels that benefit from a search engine optimization strategy are your website, your blogs, and your infographics. Ultimately, your blogs and your infographics are going to live on your website or a website. And so it's important to include that. You might ask how. So in the case of a website, you're going to do all the SEO, different on-page, off-page, technical tactics. In the case of your blog that goes on your website, that blog is going to include some of those keywords, whether it's the title of the blog, the link to the blog, comments throughout the blog in the sense of titles, subtitles, content. And then your infographic, because it's a picture, what you want to do is make sure that file name has some of those keywords in it. So an infographic file name might say digital marketing strategies, or if we use this class as an example, types of digital marketing strategies. Next up, we have content marketing. So content marketing is more or less all of the words that you use to do your marketing. And so at the end of the day, whatever product you're selling, service you're offering, you want to provide a solution to their problem. So it's always good to keep in mind what the end user's intent is. Why are they looking for you? Why do they want to do business with you? Why are they coming to you? If you understand some of those problems, you write content aimed at that. So in my case, on my social media, every Monday, I do something called Marketing Monday. Marketing Monday is a tip, it's a trick, it's some type of tool that helps them. So this past Marketing Monday, we talked about, generally speaking, the types of digital marketing strategies. Knowing that this class was today, I posted that yesterday. A couple weeks ago, I talked about different scheduling tools that someone can use to automate their social media and make their life a little easier. So that's me solving a problem for an end user, knowing that my end users, my consumers are struggling to figure out, where do I find the time to do digital marketing, right? At least on social media. And so that's me solving a problem using content marketing on social media. Your strategies may be different. You may write blogs, you may write ebooks and white papers, those click funnels that we talked about. You might write infographics and have someone on Fiverr or Upwork design it for you. And then lastly, your email is a great opportunity to share some of that information that you've now put out there in your newsletter, on your website, on social media. Next up, we have social media marketing, which we've heard that term thrown around, but ultimately it means it's how you promote your brand and your content on social media channels to increase awareness, drive traffic, and generate leads for your business. Here's the trick with social media marketing. You do not want to actually sell on social media. That means you're not going to be having call to actions. You're not going to say in every post, call me for a free consultation. Call us now to fix this. Call us now for that. Sign up for that. Those are not things you want to include on social media. At the end of the day, users are on social media to be digitally social. They're looking for information. They're looking for you to fill their need, and their need is not to be marketed to. So as a small business, we have to get very creative about how we do that. So a live example I can give you is, I'm currently working with an insurance agency. We're not talking about call us for an insurance quote. What we're talking about is trampoline safety and how that could impact your insurance for your home. We're talking about fire pit safety, just in general, because it's the season for fire pits. We're also talking about pool safety because we're heading into summer. So we're talking about things that will positively impact an end user because we're helping them keep safe without actively saying, we're an insurance agency, you should call us for a quote. Over time, users will connect the dots and say, you know what, that person really helped me. That was really good information. I should call them because now I'm looking for a new insurance quote. That's the whole point. You want to be there in the long term. You're building that awareness, you're generating interest. And at the end of the day, when that end user is ready to move forward, their desire to buy, their intent, their readiness to buy, they will call you. Another common tactic we have is email marketing. Now, email marketing can get a little tricky. We're all dealing with email overload today, right? We're being inundated with email after email from different businesses, from different sales channels. Like, how many of you have signed up for that free shipping? And then you get a ton of emails from Old Navy and for Amazon and from all the different companies that you may shop with, right? So as a small business, you have to be a little careful about over emailing your customer. So you want to get strategic very carefully in your email space. Do you have a big email list? And if you do you need to segment it? Do you need to figure out, okay, these are the users that are currently, they've bought something in the past year, they're likely to buy again. Let me offer them a loyalty reward. These are users who have never bought anything, but they signed up for that free shipping. So let's see if we can entice them to buy something, right? There's lots of different reasons you want to think about how you do your email marketing. But I always tell my clients, you should be emailing your clients no more than 2 times a month. Nonprofits in particular struggle with this because you have donations, you have events and those kind of things, but you shouldn't be emailing your entire mass mailing list more than 2 times a month if you're a small business, unless you have something super compelling to tell them. So that means that you need to condense your information. You need to make it very clear, very concise, and then have buttons that lead to your website where they can read more information, whether it's a news publication, whether it's an event calendar. That's where you want to get strategic. Small bits of information that drive them to the place they need to go. Channels that benefit from this are your website and your social media, because ultimately you're going to drive them back to your website, or maybe you're driving them to social media because there's something really cool you want them to see. Social media does also include YouTube. So if you've got a recent performance or a how-to video, that's another place you can drive traffic to using email marketing. We also have marketing automation. You may or may not have heard this term, but basically these are various softwares that allow you to automate the basic marketing operations. For example, newsletters, if you have a paid subscription to MailChimp, Constant Contact, Zoho, or some common ones, you can set up your newsletters months in advance. You can have all the content pre-written and they can be sent on a specific schedule. Then in this case, as you think about your data for the end users, you could bifurcate that data and say, okay, these users should get this email on that frequency, and another set of users may get a different email on a different frequency. So this is where marketing automation can allow you to get really nitty gritty about that. But again, we're dealing with email overload. So if you had to look at your overall marketing strategy, is email automation very important to your business? For some users, yes. And for some, no. You may take that same automation, but use it on social media. You don't have to actively post yourself every time. What you may decide to do is use an automated tool that will schedule your post. I do it for a lot of my clients. We do 1 month ahead. All the posts are scheduled and we monitor them as they go out. We do all the digital engagement that we need actively, but the posting themselves are happening in an automated fashion so we can focus on other things. Blogs can even be automated depending on the platform you're using. You can pre-write your blogs and have them automatically be published at a certain date and certain time. And if you're really techie, you can have your blog published at a certain date and a certain time, and then have something automated that will send an email out to your email list saying, there's a new blog live on the website, click here to read more. That's one way of using automation in a simple and a complex manner. Now we also have PPC and paid advertising. I do get this question a lot and it can get really confusing. What is the difference between PPC and paid advertising? So PPC, again, means pay per click. That means that for every time that link is clicked, you then have to pay Google. Google Ads is the most common form of pay-per-click. It's not the only form of pay-per-click, but it's the most common one that we're most familiar with, as most people use Google as their ultimate search engine. Now, again, as I mentioned earlier, your pay-per-click are market value. So depending on how you've configured that click could be 10 cents. That click could be $10. That click could even be $100 or more. It all depends on the competitiveness of how you've set up that pay-per-click, which is why pay-per-click can become very dicey, and you want to make sure you have an expert in that field that can do that for you. Paid advertising is ultimately the same as maybe a bigger umbrella. The difference is with paid advertising, the way we in the industry use the words or that phrase is basically you're paying maybe Facebook, you're prepaying. You're saying, I have a budget of $50 and I'm going to use this for paid advertising. So an ad campaign is going to run at a certain frequency over a certain amount of time, reaching a certain number of users. So that's what you want to think about. So your paid advertising is budgeted and it's fixed, whereas your PPC is you're paying per click. So you're setting that up for a period of time, but depending on the volume of clicks that you get, your bill could be $100, it could be $1,000. I've heard some people had $5,000 bills. It all depends on how you want to do that. So just be very careful with the pay-per-clicks and Google Ads. The channels that benefit from that are your website and social media, again, because ultimately, where are you driving that traffic to? You should be driving it to your website or you're driving it to your social media. But if you're paying for ads to drive traffic to your social media, are you then trying to drive traffic back to your website? So you just want to think about that to make sure that you're reducing the number of clicks for the end users and you're not confusing them in the customer journey. Remember your 3-second rule. It also applies to clicks. You want to make sure you get users from point A to point B, meaning your social media to maybe a checkout in 3 clicks, or whether you're a nonprofit, you're getting from, the learn more button on your newsletter to the donate button on your website. And then again, if you're trying to go learn more, why wouldn't you just go donate if learn more takes you to donate? So you just want to think about that. Don't overcomplicate it. Keep it very simple and understand what the user's search intent is, or their intention when they're clicking on these buttons or they're using your different channels. So I know I've thrown a lot at you. I've left quite a bit of time for questions so that you can ask all the different questions you have on social media marketing and the digital tactics that you can use. So I see one question already in the chat, and the question says, I think I heard you mention file names and how they should be titled. Does the file name of a photo or other content that is loaded on your website have an impact on SEO or your customer view of the site? So to answer your question, it has a significant impact on your SEO. The file names are not necessarily something that the end users see, but the file names are something that Google sees. So the way I always describe it is that you have a website that Google is going to take and turn into code. It's going to turn all the words into code. It's then going to feed it to a machine. That machine is what we call the algorithm. The end users is over here putting in a specific search criteria. In your case, let's make this up and say, SEO tips might be what they're looking for. So if you have on your website a file name called SEO tips, Google might go, oh, wait a minute. This website right here is answering this question. Let me feed that to the end users as page 1, 2, 3, maybe. There's a lot of other factors, but in the simplest form, you want to make sure that all the file names on your website are using the different SEO keywords that matter for your business. Going to the chat, I see another question that says, I'm a nonprofit and I do lots of my own newsletters and slides. How do I best convert for digital readiness? So as a nonprofit, what you want to start to think about is, what are those snippets of information that you're offering in your newsletter? And I'm assuming slides, you mean for the different presentations you're doing for your, maybe your donor based, or maybe it's also for your stakeholders. So those are information that you want to put in different parts of your website to begin with. So it could be in a blog, could be nonprofit sometimes calls it happenings. They don't always use the phrase blog or articles. They could be in different places on that. And then if you're using social media, break it down into bits and pieces. So if I were to think about this presentation that I just did today, so if you're talking about slides, each one of those slides could be a potential post on social media. So that's how I would break it up. It's small little bits of information that you're going to drip over time to educate your audience.
Here's another question, Nalini. Can you
Sure.
talk more about SEM and the difference between SEO and SEM?
Absolutely. So search engine optimization is the activity to get found on Google. So it's all the different steps and technical things you're going to do, going back to that earlier question about renaming your files and using those keywords. That's search engine optimization. So the effective word there is optimization. It's the activity of optimizing your website. SEM is more or less what I would call the umbrella of search engine marketing. So it's just search engine marketing, and that's basically both SEO and paid pay-per-click advertising.
Here's another from an anonymous attendee. I love your advice on automating social media posts. What do you recommend in terms of creating, editing, or selecting content for social media?
So that's a two-part question. It's a very, very good question. So in terms of creating and editing, I'm a big fan of Canva, canva.com. It has a free and a paid version. A lot of people have adopted it now. It's an online version of Photoshop. For those who are familiar with Photoshop, I'm not a Photoshop user, but I've used Canva extensively. You can use Canva to create email headers. You can use Canva to create just a simple square, the 1x1 that you need for Instagram. You can create infographics on Canva. So in terms of creating and editing, Canva is a good starting point because it also brings in things like royalty-free images within the Canva library, or Pixabay, other tools. They have lots of tutorials to help you with creating and editing. In terms of selecting your content for social media, that's where you want to get strategic. So first thing you want to think about are, who are your end users and what do they want? This is really what we call audience profiling. So this is where you want to think about, if I was marketing for myself, let's use me as an example. My target audience are small business owners and entrepreneurs. They're probably between the ages of 35 and 65. I have a mix of tech savvy and non-tech savvy. Knowing these qualities about these end users, I am now going to start to think about, what are the problems that they have and how can I solve them? So to your point, I could do a post on creating and editing social media. And thank you. You've just given me next week, Marketing Monday. I'm probably going to do a post on Canva because I don't think I've done that recently. Right. So thinking about that, you've just asked a question that I'm going to make a note of and know that that's what someone's asking a question on. That's what I'm going to post about. So you could send out surveys to find out what people are interested in. You can just simply ask around, ask the folks around you and say, what is it that you don't know about? What do I do? What about my business confuses you? Start to figure that out. And then you could start to build a list of all the different topics that you could potentially post about.
Here's another one from a nonprofit. Mary, how do a lot of my own do a lot of my own newsletters and slides? How do I best converse for digital readiness?
I think I grabbed that one earlier, but I'll do it again. So nonprofits are just anyone using their newsletter or their slides. What you want to do is take that content and break it down into bite-sized information. So in my case, I just did a whole presentation on the types of digital marketing. So I may take one slide and make one social media post out of it. And a couple of those slides, I'll probably make 2 or 3 social media posts out of it because again, bite-sized information. This is also a good driver. I could take this whole presentation and turn it into a blog. And then that blog can go on my website. So that's another way of building trust with my audience because I'm proving that I'm an expert in my field and I'm giving them the information they need to build their business.
Here's one from Sarah that you may be able to help her with. My
Sure.
US website has the same name as the UK website, apart from .com versus .co.uk. How do I make the US website appear above the UK site in a Google search?
So this one's a little tricky, Sarah. So the reason for that is part of your search engine optimization efforts, they're called ranking factors. Google has several different ranking factors that feed your search engine optimization for your website. And one of the ranking factors actually has nothing to do with you, and it's all about the end users. Where is their IP address located, meaning the registration number on their computer? Google is able to figure out that that person is sitting in the UK versus the US. They're also thinking about that person's interest. Do they visit more UK sites versus the US sites? And so some of that's actually going to be driven by Google automatically for the end user. So if they see they're in the UK, the internet service providers are probably going to drive the UK site first before they drive the US site, knowing that the end users are sitting in the UK based on what they know about the end users.
That sounds,
Sorry, go ahead.
that sounds like a helpful answer for a rather specific area.
It is. Well, there's a second part to that, is that part of what you can do for your search engine optimization is to include what's called location-based information on your website, whether it's your Google My Business, which is outside of your website, but on your website itself saying servicing the United States from the state to that state if you wanted to get a little more specific. And then on your UK site, maybe mentioning that specifically. Some of that does help drive some of your search rankings. The reason is we're dealing with 2 different factors on the end user side again. Users are typing in things like blah, blah, blah near me. And that's where Google's going to figure out, okay, you're located in the UK and this website's in the UK and you're looking for this over here, and then put it together and feed it to the end user. Other factors that go into that are Siri and Alexa. Sometimes people are just asking those, which complicate things a little bit. Those are called voice search. And we in the industry are still learning how to adjust the SEO for that. So I don't have a specific answer specifically on that, but just keep in mind that voice searches also can impact how users find you.
Here's another one from another anonymous, Nalini.
Mm-hmm.
How do you find keywords for blog articles?
So finding the keywords for your blog articles is a bit of a trial and error. I use a website called Google Trends. That's trends.google.com. And what you're basically doing is Google is giving you real-time information on what people are searching for. A really funny one, since we're talking about the UK, was after a couple of years ago, the government asked the masses, the population, to rename one of their latest boats, and everybody voted, and the boat got named Bodie McBoatface. And Google Trends showed that that was a trending topic on Google because people were Googling Bodie McBoatface for a period of time. Another one, speaking of the UK, was Brexit. after Brexit was voted on, there was a spike in searches around what is Brexit. And so that's where you can use Google Trends to figure out what people are searching for and when. What gets tricky is that it's a guessing game and you have to make an informed guess. So going back to that daycare example I gave early on, the daycare opened up a new location in Greenwich, and we were trying to figure out what are people searching for. And we typed in daycare Greenwich. And then when we reversed it and we did Greenwich daycare, we actually saw a spike in the numbers because we actually had the phrase backward based on how users are actually searching. So this is where you want to be a little intuitive around, okay, are there different ways of saying the same thing? Are there ways of saying something that involves acronyms? You can even start Googling yourself and seeing what other people are saying in their blogs related to your topic. So there's some trial and error and quite a bit of research involved, but Google Trends is how you're going to validate that information to make sure that whatever it is that you're trying to use is actually what people are searching for.
So here's another one from another anonymous, or maybe the same anonymous. How does one best initially pick a hosting service for one's website? How complicated or easy is it to change hosting services later on? If the initial hosting service stops offering initial promotions and so forth, and wants to suddenly increase monthly hosting fees?
That's a little complex a question, so I'll tackle it in some bite-sized steps. First thing first is it depends on who your hosting provider is. So if you're going with Shopify, Wix, or Squarespace, those are some of the common ones on that has more of a graphical interface. If you decide to stop hosting on those three platforms, you have to rebuild your website elsewhere. There's no way around that. You cannot zip it up, lift it, and shift it. A very common one that you can use to move your website as needed is WordPress. What you want to do is if you desire to move your website knowing that hosting costs are going to change, what you would do is you would get web hosting from whether it's GoDaddy, Bluehost. I personally prefer HostGator. It's cheaper. They have the best customer service in my opinion. Again, just my opinion. And what you can do is if at the time comes that you get this discount for 3 years, and then first thing you can do is probably call them and negotiate and say, I'm a longtime customer and I would really like to stay with you. Would you honor the current rates that you're offering? Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. In a situation where they don't, if you're technical enough, you can do this, or you can work with a web developer, or depending on who you're moving to, the new hosting provider may provide a free service to move the website over. So going back to HostGator, I've had clients that they've moved from Network Solutions or SiteGround over to HostGator, and HostGator's done the migration for them for free as part of becoming new customers. I believe Bluehost may offer that same service. So those are some of the deciding factors. Ultimately, it comes down to one of two things with picking your hosting provider. The first one being cost. Wix, Squarespace are your most expensive options if you're not an e-commerce website. If you're an e-commerce website, Shopify is your most expensive option. However, it all depends on what you're looking for. Wix and Squarespace offer you the opportunity to do it in a graphic design interface where it's all drag and drop. And for those who are much more comfortable in that space, you can do that. If you're dealing with WordPress, you're a lot more technical, and there are builders that plugins you can install that would create a drag and drop interface that we do for our clients. So for the attendee who asked that question, if you did want to reach out, we can talk maybe in more specific details around what you're looking to do.
Here's another anonymous. It might depend on the product or service, but would you recommend PPC, Google Ads versus paid ads on social media? Since you recommend not selling on social media, how much do you advise you invest in paid social media?
That is a very, very good question. So first thing first is, do I recommend PPC versus and Google Ads? The answer is no. I personally do not. As a business, we don't offer that service. We don't advocate for it. And there's a very specific reason why. Google has now hidden the statistic, but up to 2 years ago, I used to be able to pull an article and share it with you that said 80% of individuals who search on Google skip all the paid ads and go right to the organic search results. Think about your own behavior. How often do you go to Google and you see all the sponsored ads and you scroll right past them because you have no idea if they're legit? You have no idea if they're trustworthy, and you have no idea if they're a scam. So you go right to the organic search results because you're more likely to trust those results. You're not alone. Ask the folks around you how often they do that. And you're going to find statistically about 80% of people skip the paid ads. Every now and then I click a paid ad just to see what it's going to do, but I'm very leery about it because I don't know it's actually going to go where it's supposed to go or if it's going to lead me to a scam website. So it's one of the reasons that I don't advocate for it. And also, as I mentioned earlier, if they're misconfigured, I have heard horror stories of people paying Google and owing them because you agree to the terms and conditions, $2,000 to $5,000 because of a misconfigured paid ad. So if you are going to do it, make sure you have an expert and you have proof that they know what they're doing. Otherwise, I don't recommend it. Now, the second part of that question is social media marketing and paid advertising and selling. So I'm glad you asked this question because I didn't clarify. When you're doing what I call organic social media, so that means you're posting to your feed, you're posting to your Insta stories, those are places that you're not going to want to sell to clients. However, if you are going to do paid advertising on social media, then you do want to sell. You want a call to action because you paid for that space and you're trying to get them to buy something with you. And there's actually part of the configuration will include a very specific call to action. What do you want them to do? Sign up, buy now, click here, learn more, donate now. Those are some of the common features that they have. So to just reiterate that, in your organic social media, meaning the post that you're going to schedule automatically or do yourself to your feed or to your Insta story, because Insta story goes across the top, your feeds go up and down. That is what you want to limit the amount of time you sell. The rule of thumb is 80-20. 80% of time create value, mean give them information, entertain them, do something of that nature. And only 20% of the time is when you want to sell, because every now and then you might need to sell. So for those of you who follow me on social media, you'll find that I very rarely put my classes out there and say, sign up now. What I will do is maybe once a month, I'll do a video and post it to my Insta story and say, hey, don't miss this upcoming class. Click the link in my bio to make sure you sign up. I don't do that very often, and I minimize how I do that because I do try to skew towards the 80-20, sometimes 90-10, where I try to create value more often than I'm selling.
Here's one from Jonathan. How effective are Google posts? That's a rather broad question.
Jonathan, I'm assuming you're talking about the Google My Business post. That's an actual open question for me as well. I've had several clients ask me that recently because they've opened that up, and I'm not exactly sure. I'm not sure if the Google My Business postings are helpful or harmful. What I like to tell my clients to do is to keep the Google My Business as professional as possible. I believe in less is more on the Google My Business, meaning you list your services, you list examples of things that you need to get out there, and you use your Google My Business to generate reviews. I think that's what people are most looking for on there. And of course, your contact information and your hours are correct. So in terms of posting to your Google My Business, I can't honestly answer that just yet because I'm still researching around if it really does add value or not.
So back to nonprofits. Here's one from Carrie. So after you develop a social media message, then put it on your nonprofit Facebook page, then how do people find it?
So it's a very good question, Carrie, and nonprofits fall into this very often because they defer to Facebook over other social media channels. Facebook is incredibly tricky. In our industry, we call it the pay for play model, meaning about 2 years ago, we always long suspected this, and Google actually came out and actively said this is a fact that they are suppressing business page posts. So even though you're a nonprofit, you're still technically a business page. So what Facebook is doing is actively suppressing you and then trying to encourage you to pay for ads. So it's a little tricky in that space. If you wanted to get very active on Facebook, you can invite people to follow the page, but there's still no guarantee they're going to see your content. Where you're going to find much more success is putting that on Instagram, because Instagram, there is an algorithmic way to get your content seen. That is being digitally social. Instagram is counting how often you open Instagram. It's counting more often that you're liking and commenting on things, how often you're posting. Postings tend to be minimal, but it's more about engagement. What Instagram is really trying to say is that you're digitally active, meaning you're trying to be digitally social. So it's going to show your content to more people because you're being digitally social. So I know that sounds a little confusing. The way I describe it is, imagine you go to a networking event. and you stand in the corner and you hand out 2 or 3 business cards, but you never go and you never shake a hand, you never introduce yourself to somebody. That is how Instagram is going to treat your content if you don't become digitally social. They're basically saying, yeah, you're just posting automatedly and you're not actually doing anything. It's counting all of that. Remember, with technology, it can track stuff. So in order to get your stuff seen, I recommend switching channels to Instagram as well. You do them both simultaneously, but on Instagram is where you have a better chance of getting your content seen than Facebook.
Do you see any more questions? Let's see. I have lots of thank yous for your presentation, and it's such a broad subject and it's covered so concisely. We want to remind everybody if they can see this whole thing again, go to our website, fairfieldcounty.score.org, and in a couple of days this will be posted. You can reread the whole thing. So I think that is useful. No one can absorb everything in an hour's time. Now, have we covered everything?
I see one last question that just came in. It says, can you do infographics on Canva? The answer is absolutely yes. You can do infographics on Canva. When you go into Canva, they're going to give you all the different options. It might be named differently and you might be able to search. It's really interesting. Even they have now worksheets. Teachers can use Canva to design worksheets and handouts that are pretty and that have a lot of designs. When I go into Canva, what I tend to do is look at something that's been pre-made and then customize it. I don't necessarily have the creative mind frame because I'm not a graphic designer to think about what do I want it to look like. I tend to look at what other people have done in terms of the templates they give you, and then I customize it. So Canva does offer you that ability.
Well, that's a lot of good questions from and a lot of good answers for this morning. Just again, a reminder that you can see the presentation again on Facebook in a couple of days. Just go to our website. And another reminder, if you need to get in touch with Nalini for some reason, I think your web is on the bottom of this.
Yeah, it's kind of tiny at the bottom of the slide. Because my SEO works, if you guys Google EdgeSpace Marketing or Nalini Goolsarran, you should be able to find me. And if I'm not mistaken, I think the original email might have had my contact details, but I'm also on LinkedIn. It's another great way to find me as well.
So Nalini has also given a number of workshops, and you'll find those on our website on other subjects. And a reminder that Fairfield County SCORE offers free individual counseling, and you can request a mentor to work along with you to integrate your questions with your daily, what your encounters are daily. Also, we'd like you to fill out your evaluations. They have been sent to you at the end of this webinar. You'll get them. And we thank you so much for listening, and Nalini especially. Thank you for taking the time. I know you're doing this from Maryland. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm in Maryland.
I was a little nervous when I hadn't heard from Nalini, and I said, "Where are you?" She said, "I'm in Maryland." She's such an experienced person in this area that she has absolutely no trouble picking up and going anywhere, and it's just so impressive to me. Thanks again, Nalini, and to the Norwalk Public Library for sponsoring today. Stay well, everybody, and have a nice day.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you for coming.